Welcome to episode 19 of the Popanimecomics Lounge. My guest today is psychedelic superstar, OVW World Heavyweight Champion Chris Silvio. But before we get into the interview, I'd like to remind everybody, please follow me on Twitter at PopAnimeComics and check out PopAnimeComics.com for articles regarding anime, comics, and pop culture. So without further hesitation, let's dive right into this interview. When were you first exposed to wrestling?
Pretty much when I came out of the womb. There's never really ever been time in my life when I haven't been around wrestling. I had older brothers and was born in the mid-'80s, which was like the biggest wrestling boom until the Attitude Era. So it was pretty hard to not know wrestling in those days. But yeah, I just always remember watching as long as I can remember.
So what did you watch when you were growing up?
My favorite show to watch was Saturday Night's Main Event. I remember I'd stay up as a real little kid. I'd try to stay up till like 9 or 10 whenever the show came on, which for a 5-year-old kid is, freaking crazy as it is. But yeah, man, I watched all that. I watched all the WWF pay-per-views. I didn't really see too much WCW until like the early 90s. So I pretty much grew up on Savage and Hogan and Bret Hart, those guys.
So when did you know that you wanted to become a professional wrestler?
I didn't know, this is going to sound kind of crazy. I didn't know that you could do such a thing. Obviously, I watched these guys on TV, but I had no idea that just a normal, everyday person could like go to a school and become a wrestler or anything like that. I say around like maybe 97 or 98. I discovered some independent places and kind of heard there's a thing called a wrestling school where they'll teach you about wrestling. So I'd say from about the age of 13, I decided that's what I wanted to do.
Where did you go to find a school to start training?
I kind of started ass backwards. There's a few schools, I guess you could call them, in my area. When I started in Virginia, the Mid-Atlantic area. And it was weird. One of my buddies had a business card on his refrigerator for this promoter named Travis. And that's about the only positive thing I'll say about this guy. But anyway, and it advertised like a wrestling school. So I called this guy up and set up the rings and worked out with a couple of their guys. It was like the most informal training possible. I think they showed me like 2 things over the course of several months. Then we started, like many people from that time, we used to put our own backyard wrestling shows on. So I learned most of like my early stuff just by trying what I saw on TV. And from there, I trained with a group in Richmond for about 6 or 7 months. And, kind of learned some of the basics and fundamentals and stuff like that.
So how old were you when you started to train?
Almost 17. You couldn't get a license till you were 18 in Virginia, but I think you could start training at like 15 or 16. So yeah, I think it was just short of my summer before my 17th birthday.
And what did your training primarily consist of?
To be honest, like in the wrestling industry, there are several reputable places to train. I'd say maybe 10 or less in the country, but there are hundreds of places that really aren't necessarily qualified to train people. The way that I look at it, you got to be trained by somebody that has come up in a proven system or somebody that's been trained under somebody that knows some stuff and been somewhere. It's a lot like the blind leading the blind with some, not to sound negative or anything like that, because there are a lot of good trainers on the independent circuit, but there's a lot of people that really didn't learn the business the right way that are just showing other people how to do stuff the wrong way. So it really kind of hurts. And the places I trained at in Virginia, prior to me just kind of taking over my own training, some of those were a little bit similar. There were people that really hadn't been anywhere, no offense to them, just hadn't really been anywhere or done anything. So it's kind of hard to teach somebody else when you don't have that much experience on your own.
So you have a very unique style of speed with some technical wrestling, strength, and you're a high flyer. How did you develop that technique and this style of wrestling?
Well, as you guys know, I'm a bit of a badass. That's pretty much known the world over. The ultra-violent Chris Silvio is pretty damn good in the ring. I just kind of pieced together a bunch of styles. I consider myself really a hybrid wrestler, meaning I don't work just high-flying. I don't work like a Southern style wrestler or just a hardcore wrestler. I just kind of took elements from all these different genres and things that fit me and that I do particularly well and just kind of threw them in a big pot and came out with something that's pretty awesome. It's really no different than like music. Like, I'm a big fan of music and cinema, as I've talked about on, previous interviews. There's not really like one single genre of music that I'll just say, no, I'm only going to listen to rock and roll, or I'm only going to listen to country music. The way I see it, there's good music and there's bad music. So it doesn't really matter what genre. If it's a good tune, I'll dig it. It's kind of the same with pro wrestling. You can switch styles and have good things and bad things, but I just kind of try to combine everything I can and make it my own. So I definitely have a distinct style that I'd say nobody in the country is really doing in this day and age. So I kind of stand out because of that, and I don't plan on changing that anytime soon.
So when did you first really break into the wrestling business?
I had my first match in March of 2002. Like I said, I'd done probably a year or so of training off and on. March of 2002, I had my first match in Elizabeth City, North Carolina, against a wrestler named Paradise, who went by Kamikaze Kid at the time. He's currently an associate producer at TNA Impact Wrestling, so shout out to James Long. I hope you were doing all right, my friend. But yeah, I had my first match in 2002. It was like some really crappy YMCA in this small town in North Carolina, but it seemed like WrestleMania to me. Funny story is I'd ordered pro gear. I ordered my first set of tights. I went by the name Susio at the time. So I got these, what I thought were real cool blue tights with Susio on the butt, and I ordered some kick pad, real nice, shiny, beautiful kick pads. I was ready to go. Well, something happened and it got delayed, so it was time for my first match and I didn't have gear. So the night before the show, I went out to a local sporting goods store and I was like, well, screw it. I'll get a singlet and I'll find something that resembles a kick pad. The only singlet they had was a youth extra small. Granted, I wasn't very large when I started wrestling. I was probably 125 pounds. But this singlet was so small before the match, Paradise literally had to pull the straps over my shoulders because I couldn't pull it up myself. And I got some really stupid, like, softball sliding guards or something to look like kick pads. It was a real mess. But the match was pretty damn good for a first match.
So after your first match, where'd you go from there and how'd you get booked for other matches?
This was a place that I had been training at pretty regularly, so they ran fairly consistently, I'd say a show or two a month. But really what got me booked is even when I started, I didn't necessarily know a whole lot, but I always knew how to stand out and engage the crowd. And even then, I was the only person kind of working the style that I did that kind of mixes in all these different influences. So I started just getting noticed in the area just because I was different and the audience was reacting to me. So I just remember it was kind of small circle of people. Promoters will go to each other's shows. I just remember being approached after, several shows by some promoter or another just saying, hey, I like what you did here. I like what you did with the crowd. You want to come work for me? So I pretty much bounced around that mid-Atlantic area for about 7 years or so. And we also ran our own promotion in Virginia called Richmond Lucha Libre. If you haven't seen any of the stuff from RLL, it's pretty awesome. Look it up on YouTube. We did some really cool, groundbreaking stuff. So yeah, I was around that scene. I helped promote my own company. We did very well. We actually used to outdraw the farm league team for the Atlanta Braves, the Richmond Braves. We used to kill them with our gates. We were running pretty strong for a while. Then in 2007, I decided I wanted to come up and train at OVW and try to take my career to the next level, and it's probably the best decision I ever made.
Now, speaking of 2007, you came to OVW as well as DWC.
DCW, Derby City Championship Wrestling, or Derby City Wrestling.
So how did you find both of these promotions?
DCW was kind of like the NXT to WWE. So the NXT concept, that's not a new concept. That's something they've been trying to develop for years. OVW did this back in 2007. Basically, there was the main show, which was the guys that were under WWE developmental contracts. And then they wanted to start a TV show for the guys that were not under contract to get them experience, and the office in Stamford could take a look at some guys and say, all right, you're good enough to move up or whatever. So that's kind of how that started. I want to say it was kind of short-lived because in 2008 WWE severed their relationship with OVW, but DCW had a pretty nice run. It was some funny stuff, man. once I did, me and Paradise, we did Romeo and Juliet. We performed Romeo and Juliet live on TV, and he was Juliet, which if you know Paradise, that would make a lot of sense. It was pretty funny because we moved down here and we didn't, have jobs. We were just working out and wrestling and eating peanut butter sandwiches and shit like that. And we were watching. I love sitcoms, like 90s sitcoms. I don't get to watch them near as much as I'd like to, but me and Paradise, that's one of the things we shared. We would get seasons of like Full House, Different Strokes, Family Matters, all that kind of stuff. And I always thought it was funny how in every single sitcom, there's the episode when the kid has to be in Romeo and Juliet and they're nervous about having to kiss the boy or the girl and the thing. So I remember we were just sitting around drinking beer one day and I was like, hey, wouldn't it be funny if we did that on wrestling? And we showed it to Rip Rogers one day in class, and he laughed his ass off, and everyone else did. And he just came up to us and he goes, hey, can you do that on TV? Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, we ended up doing Romeo and Juliet. We also did some sock puppet shows, some singing, some dancing, a lot of stuff like that, just, trying to entertain everybody. And it helped us, though. It got our foot in the door. And then once they saw how entertaining we are, they got to notice how good at wrestling we were, too.
So in OVW in 2008, you were being tracked to win tag team titles. How did that come about?
That was a big deal because I'd been there about a year and a half or so, and that was kind of close to the time the WWE severed their relationship with them, and we, the DCW guys, we basically had to step up and carry the show. We had to take over the business and make sure that the houses were drawing and stuff like that. So a lot of us got opportunities that were, we had to really scrape by, in the old developmental system. I can't remember exactly how it happened. We just had a few good matches, and one day Danny Davis pulled us. I think this was actually the first conversation I had with Danny Davis the first year and a half I was there. He pulled us into his office and said, hey, we're going to do a tag team tournament on Thanksgiving Day. We're like, nobody's going to show up to wrestling on Thanksgiving Day. This guy's out of his mind. And he said, yep, we're going to do a tag team tournament. We're going to put you guys over. So we're, okay. Yep, we'll be there. But it turned out to draw pretty well, despite my claims. We had a packed house, and I think we wrestled 4 or 5 matches that night in the tournament. I want to say there was a cage involved. I think the main event, the finals, was in a cage, and Paradise jumped from the top of the cage, which is the highest cage in wrestling. That's not I'm not working. That's shoot. Look at an OVW cage match. You will not find a taller cage in professional wrestling. I'm damn sure not jumping off of that, but he did, and we won the titles, and it was cool. It just kind of felt like, the work we'd put in got noticed, and it was one of the finer moments in my career, my early career.
Winning the tag team titles really created a rivalry with Dirty Money and Scott Cardinal. How do you feel about that, back and forth between your team and theirs?
We had a couple. I think we had 2 really good matches, but the feud could have been way better than it was. It was kind of somewhere along the way, Dirty Money is actually from the same area, the Mid-Atlantic area that we're from, so we'd known him previously before OVW. I don't really know what it was, but we just we didn't really click too well with Scott Cardinal. So I guess, when you don't really click well with somebody, when you go in there and try to have matches, it just, you can't really get the best results. So at that time, we all just, didn't really get along too well with one another, and the matches, I think, suffered because of that. If you got people out there going out for the sole purpose of having a good match, it's very easy to have a good match. But when there's other stuff involved, it's kind of thrown to the wayside. But should have been a lot better, but we did have some couple good ones.
And so with OVW putting the tag team belts on you, how did that affect you psychologically?
Well, it meant we had to show up to more shows, which was cool because I just wanted to get as much ring time as I could and wrestle pretty much every day. There were times when we would do between 3 and 5 bookings a week, which is pretty much unheard of on the independent level. I think it just kind of validated that we were as good as we thought we were. I guess that's the best way to say it. How it affected us psychologically. It was good to know that they gave us the opportunity, and I thought we did a pretty good job in that role.
Now, in 2010, you competed in a variety of matches involving tag team championship belts, a bunch of different partners, including Fang and Raphael Constantine. How do you adapt to working in different teams?
I've studied a lot. I've always loved tag team wrestling. So when I got into wrestling, I wanted to be a tag team wrestler. So I just studied, man. I just studied match after match, all these great teams. So it's a completely different art. That's one thing that I don't know if fans are really smart to. It's a completely different animal learning how to work as a singles wrestler versus a tag team wrestler. Because you find out not only what to do to highlight yourself, but how to highlight your partner and highlight your opponent. So it's a fine art, tag team wrestling. And I just studied like anything else. You want to get good at it, you study and you practice. Raphael Constantine was my second longest running partner next to Paradise. And he and I just clicked. We worked with each other for the first time in DCW, and he was super small. I got him on, a heavyweight training regimen and a diet and stuff. But when I came in, Fang was no shit, like 115 pounds or something like that, just tiny. And I don't know, maybe I was about 155 when I came to OVW. I think I'd been lifting for about 2 or 3 years, so I was still putting on size. And when I found a small guy, it was cool because I was like, all right, we can do a bunch of stuff. We can do ranas and head scissors. I'm like, okay, good, because all those guys were monsters for the most part, and I didn't have anybody that I could really have a fast-paced, quick match with. So I was excited to start working with him. So we always had real good matches together and became very good friends. So when the opportunity came for us to team up, it was awesome. He and I just clicked so well. I would recommend anybody watching this, look up Fighting Spirit versus the Elite, or Fang and Susio versus the Elite. Those were some of the best tag team matches of my career. It was myself and Raphael Constantine against Adam Revolver and Man Beast McNailer. These matches were just, that's how you do a good tag team wrestling match. So they're really cool, and it was actually through those series of matches that I got noticed with Ring of Honor Wrestling and got some opportunities with them for quite a while, but it was all due to that feud that we had with the Elite. We were just having these awesome matches, and we knew how to work together so well.
Now, to mention another one of your partners, Ryan Nemeth.
Yes, Nemeth, the brother of Dolph Ziggler. Nemeth is cool, man. That's my boy. I think he did a little bit of amateur wrestling in maybe high school or college. He played college rugby. He decided he wanted to get into the business around 2010, I believe, and came and trained at OVW, and he was super green at the time because he hadn't been wrestling long, but he's real cool and real funny and just kind of got along with everybody. So he was definitely my toughest tag team partner. We had fun, but he had literally zero experience. So it was some of it was kind of tough, but it was a really good challenge for me because I could, take somebody that has hardly no experience and, kind of cover up some of the areas that he was lacking and, get the matches over and stuff like that. But Ryan always had a good attitude. He did his part. And he's a hell of a performer and a funny guy too. Hot Young Briley. I actually gave him that name. He's credited me for that. I used to call him that Hot Young Nemeth Kid. And when he went to NXT, he marketed himself as Hot Young Briley. I think his Twitter handle is still Hot Young Briley. For rights to that name, he still owes me a 6-pack of beer and anywhere from $500 to $500. So you just give me a call when you get a chance, buddy.
So to talk a little bit about how you got into singles wrestling.
Singles, we were doing the Fighting Spirit tag team, me and Raphael Constantine, and we had a really solid match at a Ring of Honor house show, and I was just trying to move to the next level of my career, and I kind of felt like we'd done all that we could at the time as a tag team. So I had a bunch of ideas how I wanted to present myself and stand alone. That's when I started portraying myself as psychedelic superstar Chris Silvio. Kind of you saw that character then morphing into my personality today. The thing about being a tag team wrestler for so long is you always have to count on somebody else, and I'm always on time for things. I'm very organized, so it's kind of hard trying to keep up with someone else. Like, hey, you got to be here on this date, you got to do this. It's a lot easier just to kind of look out for me. So I never really had the chance to have a good singles career because I'd always been in tag teams. So I decided to kind of go on my own and developed a really cool persona and started doing my best work once I did that. So it's definitely been a fun ride, and I think every single year I get better and better, and you just see different layers of Chris Silvio.
So one of your big push with your singles run was when you were going after the TV title. And when did you find out that you were going to be booked to go win that title?
I didn't. It was a funny story. Al Snow was booking at OVW, And I want to say this was either close to when TNA had their brief run as a developmental territory. It was either right before TNA came or right after they got there, one of the two. I wanted to be seen as a single star, and I was busting my ass, and I was showing up every week, having the best matches, and adding something to my entrance, adding more swagger. Just every week I came out just doing the most ridiculous stuff. I had an awesome manager, Money Mo Green, and we would just, hey, this week we're going to come out with a top hat and a monocle, and we would just think of the craziest stuff just to kind of keep it fresh. And I added like a dancing hula hoop girl and a little person to the act. So basically, it was something that kind of couldn't be denied. And every week I'd be in the office saying, okay, you ready to roll with us? You ready to put us on TV? And I did like dark matches for like 4 months straight or something like that. And I was just beating my head against the wall because it just seemed kind of like a big test. But I went out there and I performed every week. And then I tore my shoulder. I dislocated my shoulder in a match in Clarksville, Indiana. And this was on a Friday. And TV tapes on Wednesday. So I was like kind of hoping I was in a dark match that week, and I was just going to, because I didn't know how bad my shoulder was, I was just going to say something like, hey, can you switch out, maybe put someone else in a dark match? But I get there, and they're like, okay, you're going to win the TV title tonight. I go, oh, great. So I just separated my shoulder the week before, and now I got to wrestle for the TV title, and I'd worked so hard for this. It wasn't like I could say, well, no, I'm hurt or whatever. So I sucked it up, and I wrestled on it for quite a while. Anybody that remembers those matches, or if you want to go on YouTube or whatever and find them, the funny thing was, you'll notice I used a lot of my entourage. Like I used Mo Green and Mary Jane, the hula hoop girl. I basically used them so much in the matches because I couldn't do anything with my left arm. So I had my finish I could hit. I had a few spots I could hit. But for the most part, I couldn't really raise my left arm. So if you see me like trying to raise the title over my head or something, it always looks goofy as hell. Because my shoulder wasn't working, but it eventually healed and I got most of the strength back. So today we're all good. Today we're about 95%.
So speaking about Mo Green and Mary Jane, how did they come into your persona and into your stable, for lack of a better word?
I wanted a manager. I've always thought managers were cool, and it would add a different element to my personality. And I don't think anybody else had a manager, so it would have immediately made me different. And I asked Mo about it, and he wanted to do something else. Like he very nicely declined my offer. He's like, no, I'm planning on working something with such and such. I can't remember who. And I said, okay, yeah, whatever. And we ended up at a house show together, and I go, hey, Mo, you want to come out with me tonight? He goes, yeah, sure. So we went out there, and man, we just instantly clicked. We instantly gelled. We had a great time. And he's like, okay, hey, you still want a manager? I'm like, yeah, you got the job. And I wanted like just stuff to really make my entrance as elaborate as possible. So I asked a lady I knew that worked with like some contortionists and dancers, like kind of like a vaudeville sideshow type of thing. She said, I wanted a tumbler. I wanted somebody to tumble, like do flips, cheerleader style. And I wanted somebody to hula hoop. I don't know why, but I just had I don't know if I had a crazy dream or I got too drunk. I don't know what it was, but I thought this was a cool idea. And anyway, she said, hey, I can get you a hula hooper, and I'll bring her to the show. So entered Mary Jane. She came out with her hula hoop, and that was another one where the second we came out together, we just clicked, which I was, more than happy about. And she and I are really, really good friends to this day. We just always gelled out there. She didn't have any wrestling experience, knowledge, so I was just kind of told her, hey, stand here, do this, and do your part, and she did a great job.
So eventually you lost your television title, and then you began to feud with Cliff Compton and Jason Wayne. How did those feuds start?
Cliff may be my favorite feud. I had a pretty killer feud this year with Eddie Diamond, but Cliff might be my favorite just because we had a lot of fun and we did some cool matches. I can't remember how it started. Cliff been away from OVW for a while, and he'd called me or texted me a few times, kind of when he saw my act developing, and just kind of said, hey, I think your shit's really good. We should work together sometime. And I just kind of said the same thing. Yeah, man, I'd love to work with you. And we just left it at that. Then Cliff ends up back at OVW several months after that. And we just kind of pitched to work together. And it had kind of a rocky start because we were both baby faces. So the audience was really split. And, Cliff's very likable. I consider myself very likable. So audience, I think, was kind of confused. Then Cliff, did something nefarious and turned heel. So once he got heat on him, it was pretty easy for us to sell the feud, and we had a really good thing going. The crowning achievement of that feud, I would think, is we damn near sold out a Saturday Night Special in 3 days. Something happened. I think like Rob Terry and Crimson were supposed to main event for the title, and something happened. I think Crimson hurt his knee or something. So that Wednesday, the Saturday Night Special is on Saturday. That Wednesday, we get informed that we're going to main event it, and they announce it on a Wednesday. It'll be Silvio versus Compton in the main event. 4 days later, we damn near sold the place out. So that was a really cool thing that, our work was so good together that we could, put all these asses in seats within 3-4 days notice. Jason Wayne was the best feud I had that never happened. It was a house show. Like, we go all around the different loops that OVW ran, and we just had these killer matches. And we only got to do, I think, one on OVW TV or a Saturday Night Special, and they gave us like 6 minutes to do it. And I just remember being pissed because I wanted to show how good Jason and I worked together. But yeah, we really kind of got shit on once they actually ran the angle. So I think we had a match or two on TV, and that was pretty much it. But anybody that saw those house show matches, they were so good. Wayne was a really, really good heel, and I knew how to do my role very well. So yeah, we had some really good stuff.
Now, in 2014, you came back to OVW, and that year you won another tag team championship belt, and you won your second TV title. How do you feel about coming back and getting both those belts during that year?
It was bittersweet. I had a lot of fun teaming up with Jamin Olivencia. He's a personal friend of mine, and the whole reason I wanted to come back into OVW is because Jamin and I have really never had the chance to work with one another. And I knew how good our matches could be. We were teaming up, and we were kind of laying the groundwork to having some matches with each other. Just, didn't actually work out, and I went in a different direction and ended up feuding with Mike Hayes for the TV title, and those are some of my favorite matches also. Anybody that doesn't know Mike Hayes, he's a really, really good talent. He lost his left leg in Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2006, and just went through hell. He had skin grafts on over 40% of his body or something like that. Guy just went through hell to just be able to rehabilitate himself and kind of learn how to function in life and work on move around on a prosthetic leg, let alone learning how to wrestle on one. So I got a lot of respect for Mike for working as hard as he did and everything he's been through. But he's another one. I think it's because we were so friendly with one another. We were both eager to just go out and have a good match. And Mike had the trust in me that I wouldn't steer him wrong. He trusted me, and we got to do a lot of stuff and have some really cool matches, and we were having the best feud in the company. Different booker was booking and just decided the last minute that we're going to scrap this feud along with a bunch of other feuds. And in the long run, it wasn't the smartest decision because business there suffered for several months thereafter. So that was pretty much the return. And then I took another hiatus after February that year and didn't wrestle really in an OVW ring until Friday Night Fight on July 24th of this year.
So to talk about this year, you received your first OVW heavyweight champion title shot.
Yep.
How did that come about? There
was OVW's Friday Night Fight, and I was in the main event of this. And I just needed a really strong opponent. And Eddie Diamond, somebody I've known for years and years. I actually trained him over a decade ago. I was his first wrestling trainer. And I knew we would have a really good match. So we ended up getting that booked for the main event. And just kind of how things go with wrestling, I ended up booked to win that match, and we had a hell of a match and an awesome series after where we just beat the hell out of each other, but in such extraordinary fashion. We definitely had, I think I'd go as far as to say, some of the best matches in OVW history, and definitely some of the best matches of 2015. I wish there were a way, I wish they would kind of maybe promote a little bit more on YouTube and stuff like that. So more eyes. You can see OVW's television show every week online or in the tri-state area, but the Saturday night specials are just like kind of like a different animal. And really, the only way to see it is to buy it on demand or to purchase the DVD. But I'd like some of those matches to be on YouTube or something like that, just so people can see, how good the work is out here right now. And I kind of consider myself almost like an underground legend. I've got so many loyal fans just from around the country and, in England and Japan and stuff like that. But, right now I'm kind of more of a undiscovered free agent, I guess is the kind of way that you could look at it. But I do wish OVW would kind of, get some more platforms to where the fans can see the Saturday night special. Even if they have one match on YouTube and they got to buy the rest to see the other, something like that. But we're just doing some really, really good work right now, and I urge any true pro wrestling fan to check it out. Really, you can rent it for 24 hours, I think, for 99 cents on demand on OVWrestling.com. So go back and check out some of the recent shows and some of the matches I have with Diamond. It will only cost you $1. You get like 24 hours to watch it, so it's a steal. Definitely want to check out Chris Silvio because he's pretty badass.
So how did you feel going into this match?
What, the title match? First title match?
TLC and then the I Quit match afterwards.
Well, I was a little bit nervous because those matches are dangerous as hell. And you do one thing the wrong way and, you can mess yourself up. So I just wanted to make sure that the matches were going to be good. That's always my biggest concern. Whether I like the guy that I'm in the ring with or I hate the guy, Eddie and I didn't always get along, and you can kind of see towards the later part of our feud, we kind of mix like oil and water. But above everything else, I want to have a good match every time out there, and I want to give the fans their money's worth. I definitely kind of consider myself a people's champion in a way. I bust my ass for the fans that buy their ticket, and anybody that's seen me work, whether it's in front of 20 people or 20,000 people, I'm going to give you a quality match. So that was really my main goal, is I just wanted the TLC to be good. And, the other match is the same thing. You got to make them different. So you have a TLC match. Well, how do you get bigger than tables, ladders, and chairs? How are we going to top that? So we had an I Quit match, and we, kind of took some even more violent things into that, and actually ended up topping the TLC match. Then we're booked in the Ultraviolent Death match just last month, our third match. And it was another situation of how the hell are we going to top what we did in those last two matches. But I think we kind of pulled the rabbit out of our asses and just had really, really killer matches. And the fans really seem to be digging what we're doing. And, the houses are going up every week. So the audience has definitely responded to the new direction of OVW. It's a brand new product with some really good guys on it. I'm just proud and happy to kind of be leading the charge on it. I want people to know how good I am. I want people to know how good some of the guys here at OVW are, because a lot of times I feel it kind of gets overlooked. So I take pride in that. I take pride in being the champion, and I take pride in kind of leading the group. And if I could be the spokesman for all of us and just say, hey, open your eyes, look what we're doing, it's amazing, I'll handle that. I'll handle that duty with pride.
So in all your years that you've been wrestling, do you have a favorite match that you've competed in?
I have a few. Ones that come to mind, myself and Paradise had a 60-minute time limit draw with the Mobile Homers, Adam Revolver, and Ted McNailer, babyface versus babyface match, which a babyface versus babyface tag match is one of the more difficult matches to put together. And what made ours very special is that we did that for an hour. And after we'd wrestled for 1 hour, the fans were chanting 5 more minutes, 5 more minutes. And I'm just so proud of that match because we really did something special there and just clicked so well. Other favorite matches, myself versus Cliff Compton cage match, the one I mentioned earlier, that was a really fun match. Myself and Raphael Constantine against the Elite at Ring of Honor's Bluegrass Brawl, I think it was called. We had a really sick match there. I had a great match for Ring of Honor in Richmond, Virginia, where I got to headline in my hometown, which was, a dream come true in a lot of ways. And Paradise and I helped pack that place. We wrestled against this team called A1, Jeff Early and Zach Hilton, and just, really, really killed it with them. And then I would say some of my recent matches with Diamond. I wouldn't know which one to say first, maybe because they were all so good, but maybe the I Quit match. And July, I had a street fight against Sabu, a guy who I have nothing but respect for, somebody that I grew up wanted to emulate in a lot of ways. And we just had a really, really killer match this July, and that was a whole lot of fun. So I think that pretty much rounds out my favorites.
And now before we get into promos, do you have any advice for anybody who wants to go into the wrestling business?
Yes. Have a backup plan. Get as much of an education as you can, or learn a trade or something like that, because it's very hard. I think people have a misperception of wrestling that you show up, you wrestle on these shows, and now you're making tons of money and you're famous and all that stuff. It's not the way it works. It's a very hard business to earn a comfortable living in. You really, really have to hustle, and it takes a physical toll on your body. So the main thing to realize is that it could all be over tomorrow. That's another reason why, I wrestle every match I'm in as hard as I do, because, I could get injured taking a body slam, just land the wrong way and my career is over. So I think it's really important for guys to realize that, how quickly all of this can be gone, and just don't put all your eggs in one basket, because at the end of the day, you don't know what's going to happen. You may get injured, you may not. You may get an opportunity with some of the bigger promotions, you may not. So it's always good to have a contingency plan in the event that stuff doesn't go as planned. Also, the second biggest piece of advice I could give is train with somebody rep. All you're going to do is learn bad habits if you don't. And it's a lot easier to teach somebody from scratch than it is to break old habits. And so if you're listening and you're thinking about getting into wrestling, first make sure it's something you want to do and it hurts bad. There's nothing fake about pro wrestling. You will get injured. You will be sore pretty much every day of your life. But if you're passionate enough about it, then it's something you can do. But just make sure you got that backup plan and trade with somebody good. I'll throw a few names out there. The Hustler Rip Rogers and Matt Capitelli at OVW. Brutal Bob Evans in the Northeast. Thatcher, Lance Storm, Danny Cage at Monster Factory, very good trainer. Team 3D, I know they're recently with WWE, so I don't know if they're taking sessions right now. That's another very good school. There may be a couple, Seattle area, Buddy Wayne. There may be a few I'm leaving out, but if you're going to train somewhere, I highly recommend training with one of those places I just named.
And finally, do you have anything you'd like to promote?
Yeah, see me every single week on television. If you're in the tri-state area, which is Kentucky, Indiana, and Ohio, we are on ION TV. If you go to OVW's website and click TV, it'll tell you how to view the shows. I think we're on at 11 a.m. on Saturday mornings and 10 p.m. on Saturday nights. They show a replay. Most people tend to watch it at the 10 p.m. hour. Also, OVWrestling.com. You can stream these shows online for anywhere in the world for absolutely free, so you can see what we do. But I do urge you strongly, just check out the product. There's just some really talented guys, and as I said earlier, I'm just very happy to kind of be leading the charge right now for the new generation of OVW guys. Saturday night specials are at the Davis Arena. They are the first Saturday of every month. We have one coming up October the 3rd, where I'll be taking on NWA talent Devin Driscoll for the heavyweight title. It's going to be a really good card. On Twitter, I'm always on Twitter. You can follow me at the Chris Silvio. I interact with all my fans. Even people that say dumb, wacky stuff. I'll still interact with you guys, and I always appreciate feedback from the fans. So check me out on Twitter. Any bookings or podcasts, anything like that, you can reference csilviobookings@gmail.com. That's CSILVIO bookings@gmail.com. If you need to get a hold of me for merch or bookings or anything like that. That about covers the promotions. Also, I'm going to be, this winter, I'll be touring the UK for a better part of 8 weeks. So I do have some dates opened up. The scene's a little bit slower in the winter, so there's not as many events running, but I still have some open dates. So any UK promotions, get at me at csilviobookings@gmail.com.
Thank you for listening to this week's podcast, and remember to subscribe to this podcast so it finds you and you don't find it, and check out the Facebook page Pop Anime Comics for all updates regarding popanimecomics.com and this very podcast. And while you wait for the next episode, everybody have a great week.